When I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesties. Over the fruited plain. But now wait a minute. I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, here we are at People on the Go's biweekly, and welcome everyone. And this is going to be a special presentation between Tracy Wright, our Deputy Director, and me. I don't have an official position, but this is going to be all about voting in general and a little thing you might have heard tell about called Project 2025. And Tracy, would you like to take it away?
Rosanna, would you like to pull up the PowerPoint?
All right, coming on with my share screen. All right, can everybody see the screen?
We are good.
Okay. Yeah. Take it away, Tracy.
This is going to be all today about voting, some important dates, some important information about voting, and then as Rosanna said, she's going to share a little bit later about Project 2025. We're happy you're here with us today. Next slide, please, Rosanna.
All right, I'm trying to get this a little bit more controllable. Just a moment, please. Here we go.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit. Rosanna, it's not quite in presenter mode.
I'm trying to get it to be in presenter mode, but I also can't figure out where can I do it this way? Oh, yes, that's how I do it. Okay,
There we go.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're going to go
I found the right button.
the agenda a little bit and talk about what is advocacy, the importance of advocacy, and give some voting resources. And we're going to talk about important dates in voting, and then the power of numbers. Next slide, please, Rosanna. So what is advocacy? It's an action that speaks in favor of or recommends or argues for a cause, supports or defends or pleads on behalf of others. And it's either speaking up, sitting up for others. And why do we advocate? That's a question to the audience.
Hello.
Okay.
We're in the middle of a presentation right now. Please do not interrupt it.
Okay, next slide.
Well, I was just posing the question
Okay.
out there to anybody. Why do we advocate? Why do we, every other Friday and all the other times we get together and DD Day, why do we do those things?
Tracy, it's Aileen.
Yes, Aileen.
We do it to let others know what is happening in our community, in the disability community, and how the actions that let's just say we're advocating in Annapolis. When we do DD Day, we're doing it to let them know how, if they vote positive, it's going to affect us. If they vote negative, how it affects us.
And what are some of the things you've advocated for?
I've advocated for DSP better pay for the DSP salary for the DSPs that we have.
Great.
Without them, many of us wouldn't be able to live our daily lives.
Yep, that's great. Okay, Rosanna, next slide, please. So the importance of advocating, so we can have our voices heard on issues that are important, protect and promote our rights, right? And have our wishes and desires known about things that are important to us and the decisions that are made about our lives. Next slide, please, Rosanna. And this is a great voting resource. Vote 411. And Rosanna, could you put this link in the chat?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. And this is a good place to go to learn about the different candidates. I found it usually in plain language. Each of the parties, both the Republican and Democratic parties, have what they call platforms, or that pertain to disabilities, that deal with disability issues, and you can go to learn about what they say that they will do once they get elected for the disability community. Next slide, please. Another great resource here is the Maryland General Assembly website. You can find out a little bit about who represents you, other than we know the big question for the election is who's going to be our next president, but we will also be voting for other people. So to be able to find out who represents you in Maryland, you could go on the Maryland General Assembly website. I believe you can type in your zip code and it comes up with who your representatives are, and find out based on where you live. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some important dates for the general election. The last date to register to vote would actually be on election day. And that would be, you can register when you go in to vote. Hopefully you'll have done it before then, because it's a little bit crazy during election day, but you can actually register to vote on election day if needed. The last date to receive your ballot by mail or fax, to request a mailed or fax ballot, would be October 24th. The deadline to receive your ballot, to request to receive your ballot by email, would be November 1st. Wait a minute, did I mess that up?
No, I think you got it.
And then the early voting starts on October 24th through the 31st. That's the last day of early voting is actually Halloween, and I voted the last time Halloween, and there's no one hardly there for early voting, and that happens all 7 days before the election there, and it's from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and you can go. There's early voting sites throughout each of the counties. You can go on the Maryland Board of Elections website and look that up and find out where your early voting site will be. It's a little bit different. It's a different location than your regular voting site. So you can find out where that would be, and you can go into any of those. And they will also have the ballot marking devices, which we've talked about before, and you can request to use those there. And then on election day, you would go to your designated to vote, which is November 5th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So those are your important voting dates. Next slide, please. Yes.
I do have one question, if you don't mind. I was just curious, if you've chosen the vote by mail option and you get your ballot mailed to you, that's what I did. Can you send your ballot in early?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
You can send
Absolutely.
your ballot in early. And you can also, if you don't want to mail it in, you can drop it at the ballot boxes that are throughout the counties. And that doesn't have to be exactly, it's usually in places where you can vote, like your Board of Elections. It's at your early voting sites. I'm not really sure where else they are located, but I do know that all the Board of Elections, any one of the voting sites should have a ballot box that you can put your ballot in. And it does have to be in by about 8 p.m. of voting on November 5th, I believe. But it does, and you can go on the website. I don't know that I have it in this presentation, but if you're going to mail it in, it does have to be postmarked, just not in the mailbox by, I think, I'm not really sure, so I don't want to quote that exactly, but we can either get that information to anyone who needs it or help you look it up. So the importance of the power of numbers as far as our voting block, I looked it up before this presentation, and the CDC actually says that if you combine people with disabilities, their family members, and their supporters, we make up between 70 to 80 million voters, and that would be about 25% of the voting block. So our voice is really strong and really important when it comes to this election. And so, make sure to use your vote as your voice, and it's important to vote, because I always say that you can't really complain about the outcome of the election if you didn't really use your vote as your voice to affect the outcome. Next slide, please. Okay, that is the end of my part of the presentation. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rosanna. And then at the end, if there's time, if anybody has any questions about this, I would be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you very much, Tracy. All very informative. And I also wanted to let people know that we are going to, I couldn't actually put that 411 thing in the chat and run the PowerPoint at the same time. However, what I can do is I created a Google Drive that has this resource. It has all of the resources we're going to be sharing today, including Tracy's slides, and the 411 number will be included in that slide presentation when you download everything. Does that sound fair? Okay.
You can also, if anybody has trouble accessing the Google Drive, we can also send it out if you send us an email and just let us know you need it, or let us know at the end of the presentation.
Yes.
Make sure you get the information.
Yeah, there's a lot of material in that drive. Everything that we're sharing here, as well as a couple of other articles from Forbes magazine and Truth Out.
Oh, Rosanna?
Yes.
Can you just put up the flyer really quickly?
Oh, yes. Sure. Your one-pager, you mean? Yes. Okay. Just a second. All right. Share screen again. There we go. Uh-huh.
So, this is kind of easy way of looking at some of the things we talked about. Different ways we can vote. And different types of support if you need it. This has the early voting days on it for both the the primary is over, but the general is here. This also talks about different things. Maryland is a state where you don't have to have your Maryland state ID to vote. But if you are a first-time voter, it's a good idea to either have, if you don't have an ID, to have something that can prove you are who you say you are. And that may be a utility bill, a pay stub, an award letter from Social Security, or your passport. This flyer talks a little bit about the valid marking devices, that anybody can use those. I'm sure you've heard me before, those of you that have been on our calls, say that the valid marking device is a device that anyone can use. It's there to support people with disabilities, but we really like to encourage anyone to use them. And every precinct should have at least one of these, and they can be adjusted in height for people if you need them. And you can actually listen to the ballot read out, or you can read along with it on screen. So that is a good tool to use. And again, we encourage everybody, even our friends and family, to use it, because it does look different than the ballot, that the one that you would use to fill out by hand. So the reason we say we would like other people to use the ballot marking device is that so that the vote is actually kept secret, because if only 2 people with disabilities use that ballot marking device in the precinct, then they'll know how those 2 people with disabilities voted. So thank you. These are, again, you'll get this handout, and I think it did come along with the information, but we'll make sure that everybody gets this handout.
Oh.
Yes, Alex.
When I did use the ballot marking device, I had to have them fix it because it had the wrong district, which is not my district I live in. I'm like, and they got really nasty. I mean, especially started questioning my disabilities. I'm like, and actually, thank God, my my congressman was actually outside the building, and I told him I'm having trouble with this. I went right out to get him.
Well, that's great, and I would like to also welcome our partners from Disability Rights on the call. That Disability Rights has the hotline that you can call if you have any concerns during actually on voting day or after voting day, because they should not get nasty with you. They should not be asking you questions about your disability or anything like that. And if they do, you can ask. Aileen, I believe you've been election judge here in Maryland before, right?
Yeah,
They can ask to speak to.
they can ask if there's a problem with anything at the polls. You can either speak to the chief judge, or you can speak to, if there's a problem with something on the ballot and you're not, you need, sometimes they will let you speak to, they have a Democratic and Republican judge, and you speak to that person and they will try to straighten things out.
And we're going to have many more before elections, probably many more times when we talk about voting. I want to let us get to Rosanna, because I know that's an important part of what we want to, the information we want to share. So let's hold the rest of the questions, if you don't mind, till the end. But we will talk about this topic again before election day.
Yes, we'll probably have another bi-weekly where we talk about the things like this, nitty-gritty things. Okay.
Maybe even a month, one of our monthly series too, as well, because it's such a hot topic.
Yes. Okay. All right, awesome. It looks like I have the floor now, and I just wanted to preface this by saying what really matters is finding the candidates, as you're researching them, to find ones who care about the same things that you care about and who share your values. But since I know as a nonprofit organization, I really should not be openly partisan, and I shouldn't use words like Democrat or Republican or conservative or liberal or progressive, anything like that. What I decided to do was to couch this in terms of, do you want a government that cares, or do you want a government that scares? Who's going to have your back? Who cares about the same things that you do? Obviously, ensuring a decent quality of life for the elderly and disabled, making it easy for parents to care for their children with paid family leave, free pre-K education, keeping governments and churches out of reproductive health care decisions, making public places, including churches and schools, safe from armed attack, making and keeping workplaces safe for all who work there, ensuring economic opportunity for all, regardless of gender, race, or religion, ensuring the cleanliness of air, water, and soil, ensuring health care, including mental health care for all, including regardless of employment status, ensuring Americans can safely practice their own religion without being forced to adopt someone else's. This is not an exhaustive list.
What does that mean, Rosanna, when you say it's not an exhaustive list?
What I mean is that there are a lot of other things that people who care about people who might otherwise not get a fair shake, there are other things that they might also care about. All right?
Things that are on this list that
Yes. Yes. Including but not limited to, I shall say. Let's put it that way. Now, conversely, you've also got a government that would scare and be scared about things like the wrong people voting. Read that to mean illegals and people of color. Being scared about the country overrun with immigrants crossing the southern border. Being scared about Christianity under attack. Also, the heterosexual family model under attack. Scared about whether they'll be able to bring morality back to the country. Scared about too many children being turned gay by what they call groomers. Scared about what's underneath people's pants, which is kind of creepy when you think about it. Scared about men losing their purpose because women have careers. Scared about diversity hires stealing jobs from white men who earned it. Scared about pregnant women aborting their fetuses on a whim. Again, including but not limited to, not an exhaustive list. So the scary people who put together Project 2025 include billionaires and other corporate leaders who want the government to stay out of their business, leaving them free to conduct their businesses however they want, regardless of whether it maintains safety of air, soil, and water, safety of their workers, whether they are able to pay their workers fairly, or even have carte blanche to just not hire people or serve customers that conflict with the boss's religious beliefs. Then the second group would be evangelicals, who would love nothing more than to make Christianity the national religion of the country. Make homemakers and mothers the permissible career for women.
Also the way they see Islam, too.
Yes, if Christianity is the only permissible religion in their ideal world, prevent anybody from becoming gay or transgender, and keeping people from learning the truth about history. And the third members of this group, I'm calling them Joe Sixpacks, who would love nothing more than to keep minorities, women, and immigrants from stealing their jobs, and to macho cosplay with guns. Curiously, these three groups of people used to have nothing to do with each other, but they joined forces, hoping to remake the country in their image so that Christianity dictates civil law. Why are they doing this? Because they've come to the conclusion that small d democracy, where everyone is treated equally before the law and everybody has a say in how they are going to be governed, they think it's not treating them equally. Democracy, for whatever that means, is exhausted in their eyes. So Project 2025 is the result of this alliance of the scarers, although it is nothing new. It is actually the 9th edition of Mandate for Leadership. And there's the cover of the book. It's 900 pages, but we're trying to summarize it here so you don't have to read the whole thing. It was first published in the earliest edition of it was published in 1981, right after Ronald Reagan became president 43 years ago. It's also known as the Presidential Transition Project, and it's a 180-day playbook to reconfigure the entire government from top to bottom. Now, 180 days, that is 6 months. In political terms, that is lightning speed. It's like happen before you know it, before you even know what hits you. On a larger scale, It affects the careers and job security of hundreds of thousands of civil servants who work for the government, who are supposed to be doing their jobs regardless of what their personal politics are, but they would be replaced by party loyalists. These new civil servants would tell the president only what he wants to hear and not dare contradict him, carry out his orders and not dare contradict him. You might also have heard of something called Agenda 47, which sounds even more sinister, but it's separate from Project 2025. It, in addition to these provisions of Project 2025, calls for getting revenge upon political enemies. If this sounds like a dictatorship to you, well, if it quacks like a duck, but on the smaller scale, what would Project 2025 mean for you if it were to become enacted? Let's start with raising the retirement to age 70. All right, somebody is unmuted. Would you please mute your microphone? Because I can't see who is muted, and I can't mute them myself. Raising the retirement to age 70. How many people can you think of who can barely manage to get to 65 as it is? It would turn Social Security, not exactly completely destroy it, but it would turn it into a flat benefit and wipe out double dipping between disability insurance and unemployment. Without any regulations on the profits to the pharmaceutical companies, you would have higher costs for prescription medicines. You would also become harder for you to qualify for Medicaid or Medicare. It would give a $3.5 million tax cut per year to billionaires, while the average family of four pays an extra $2,600 in taxes. It would abolish the child tax credit, suspend applications for legal immigration, and it would mass deport immigrants. What would that do? So many of them work in agriculture? You think that would cause a huge worker shortage, and that in turn would skyrocket your price at the grocery cashier. You also could look forward to higher housing costs, because you wouldn't be able to deduct state and local income taxes anymore. If teachers in your children's schools get fired for teaching subjects that have been banned, look for teacher shortages to follow quickly on the heels of that. It would eliminate on-the-job protections for workers who are working in dangerous conditions. Climate change, I should point out, factors into this, because in certain conditions that take place outdoors, construction work that takes place outdoors, as well as farming, if there are no protections for people working in that kind of condition, you can very easily see people just literally dying from the heat. It would also allow workers as young as 14 to work in dangerous jobs. Bye-bye child labor laws. You would have extreme regulation of reproductive care, including in vitro fertilization and the kinds of medication that facilitate an abortion. And it would do this, Project 2025 would do this, but would revive something called the Comstock Act, which is a very old piece of legislation that hasn't been enforced in decades, but it has never been taken off the books. It's never been repealed. And it basically prevented any kind of pornographic, put that in quotes, materials through the mail. And following on from that, the Comstock Act would also label any gay or transgender material as pornographic. And it would abolish affirmative action by pretending race doesn't exist, meaning the companies would not have to keep track of the race and gender of applicants and hires. And basically not keeping the track of the data means that nobody could prove discrimination against them if there's no data to back it up. So there's a lot more to this, but it all comes down to a belief that everybody should be a productive member of society and absolutely nobody should receive any handouts. And that brings us back to us, because disabled people, in their eyes, don't deserve help because we can't work like dogs. We're a drain on government funds. Of course, we know better. What we are good at, we're very, very good. We're not lazy. We do indeed have monetary value that more than offsets the supports that we ask for. That's why we're people on the go, not people sitting on our asses. So
that's great, Rosanna. I do want to point one thing out for anybody who doesn't know. This Project 2025 comes from a group called the Heritage Foundation, and if you want to know more about who they are, I suggest you Google that.
Okay, the entire document of Mandate for Leadership is also going to be in the Google Drive. I've got a couple of other things to share with you here, and that is to by way of letting you all know that we're not as small a group as we think. We do have power in numbers, as Tracy said before. There are 61 million adults, or more than 1 in 4 adults, living with a disability in this country. And the number is larger if you include children. 7.39 million have intellectual or developmental disabilities, but only a small percentage of them are actually receiving services. So, if that sounds like it's too small to be having much of an impact, then consider these statistics from very reputable sources. 51% of the country is female. 42% of the country is now Black, brown, Asian, or indigenous, meaning they're members of Native American tribes. 42% of the country are young adults between age 18 and 39. This comprises the Gen Z and the millennial groups. Now, allowing for combinations of these three, people who are more than one of these three, this averages out to 79% of the United States. This country is female, young, and not so white anymore. And on top of that, 69% of Americans support legal abortion. 72% of Americans don't own a gun. 90% of the country wants more gun control laws. 72% of us believe the climate crisis is real. 71% of all Americans approve of labor unions. 79% of us insist the rich must pay more in taxes. 76% of us want a much higher minimum wage. Whatever it is now, a lot of states have been advocating for $15 an hour, but by now it would probably be more than 24 to achieve parity. $24 an hour. 70% of all voters believe marijuana should be legal. 73% of the country want student loan debt relief. 74% of Americans want more affordable homes. 84% of Americans want free pre-K for children aged 3 and 4. 69% of Americans support same-sex marriage. And 70% of us are demanding a permanent ceasefire in Gaza now. Which means there are more of us than there are of them. The carers far outnumber the scarers. And if that isn't enough to convince you, when you go to vote, here's your assignment. Each one, bring one. Heck, bring 3 if you can. Because 65% of Americans want to end the Electoral College. Presidential elections should be based on popular vote only. 89% of Americans oppose gerrymandering, which is the practice of drawing election results to favor only one party. And 72% of all Americans want big money removed from politics. No more buying of candidates by billionaires and corporations. Now, I should warn you that the plans are already in place for election challenges at the individual county levels, which would throw entire states into question and then the entire election into chaos. There is a clickable link here which takes you to an excerpt from the Rachel Maddow show from Monday, which explains all of this. But that is why we need to turn out in numbers too big to rig and too real to steal. That way, when the challenges inevitably come, the judges will have no choice but to laugh the suits out of court.
Yeah, and I just want to say, don't take our word for it. The information that was provided today, anybody can find, for themselves, anywhere. It's very important to be informed because, this might very well be the most important election that you'll vote in.
Yes, and some of these resources are here on this toolkit that I borrowed from a women's voting group called Red, Wine, and Blue. And this will also be on the Google Drive, but I just wanted to also share a couple of things here. This, where it says spread the word on social media, these are all clickable links. What that does is it takes you to a bunch of posts that you can copy and paste into your own social media, which is really cool. It's like they're all done for you. And also, if you want to see more videos that Red, Wine, and Blue have produced, that's what videos to share. That shows you some of them. One of them, let's see, they did one with, where is she? Here it is. Yes, Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts recently did a show with them called We Have a Plan for That. So that's another thing that you can be reviewing. And I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about with this. And I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to post that link to the Google Drive in the chat again. I hope I can get it to go. Did it go? No, it didn't go. Get back there. Let me try that again.
Marlene, I know you've been patient with your
Yes,
hand.
thank you. Thank you, Marlene. Yeah, I'm sorry, I really could not, I couldn't actually respond to your hand up while I was talking, but I wanted to get through all of this and still be within our 1 hour time frame.
Yeah, I understand. I just left my hand up so I'd be the first to ask
Perfect.
the question or respond to what was mentioned earlier because I'm going to have to pop off
Good.
after I
Yes.
ask my question because my ride's going to be in shortly. I actually worked the voting poll back in May when we had a election back in the spring, and they actually had me work a poll that was not in my voting district. And I had asked about using the voting machine that a lot of people with disabilities use because they have trouble blocking in those circles. They told me that I had to vote provisional, and because of that, I could not use that device. And I had specifically told the voting office that I really wanted to be in my district working for the polls, not out of my district, so that I could use that device. But, you know, I think that if you have a disability and it's hard for you to fill out that thing by hand, because the provisional is not done on that voting machine. You have to do that by hand.
Right.
I think that a person with a disability should be able to use that voting machine. I don't think they should be forced to use provisional because they're voting out of their district. They're voting out of their district because they were forced to do that because they were put at another poll because they were working the poll that day.
I'm gonna put it to our friends at DRM. Do you know anything about provisional voting as far as using the ballot marking device?
Yeah, I don't know if they're still there.
Yeah, they're here.
I'm here. I'm not super familiar, and I'm not one of our attorneys, so I don't want to give wrong information. But we do have my colleague Gabriel put it in the chat. We have a hotline and an email address where you can report anything like this, and we'll get back to you with advice from our attorneys who work on this issue on voting.
That might be something to consider putting in the presentation too, if you find out any information about provisional and using the ballot marking device.
Absolutely. I'm not familiar with any issues around that. And ideally we want to avoid or support you in not having to vote provisionally too, because that's such a it's complicated.
They told me I had to vote provisional because I was not in my district that day. I was actually in another district because that's where they put me because I was working the polls. And I specifically asked to be left in my district because of transportation. I was late getting to the polls that day. I had to be there by 6 a.m. and I couldn't get there by 6 a.m. because transportation didn't run that early in Howard County. So they put, and I specifically told them why I wanted to be at a specific school.
Right.
Because, and they did not do what I asked.
That's
and
so frustrating. Yeah.
Because of that, I was...
Yeah, they created all those problems for you, essentially. I don't really understand the decision-making there. Doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah. And they said they knew that I would be late because of my transportation. But they made me vote for provisional because I was not in my district.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it would be... I think if anyone kind of just showed up to vote in the wrong district, they would be given a provisional ballot, but you were assigned there. So I'm a little
Well,
confused.
this is Aileen. I have worked the polls before,
Mhm.
and most of the time, if you show up in the wrong district, they will tell you where to go,
Mhm.
or they will give you the choice of provisional.
Mhm. Right. So if you're trying to vote in a district that's not your district, you can vote provisionally, or you can, if there's enough time, you could leave and go back. But it sounds like Marlene was like helping with the polls, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I got from her.
She was
Yeah.
an election judge, I think.
That's just a election. Yeah, right. If she was an election judge, then she had to be there. So that's just a
But
complicated.
that's another reason
issue.
that if you're going to be working the polls on election day,
Mhm.
most of the time they are encouraging workers to either vote early or vote by absentee ballot. That way
Yeah.
you vote, because I mean you can be in your district, but there may not be time for you to vote.
Right.
Yeah, and they didn't even mail me my absentee ballot when I asked for it.
Okay.
That's frustrating.
If Cindy's on, Cindy, can you please put the link to the survey in the chat? We can still keep talking, but I want to be sure that folks have time to do the survey.
It's in the chat. I made sure to put it on there. Yeah, so because I know some people are leaving early.
Yeah, I just put it in there myself. Do we want to open that up and go through it now together?
Yeah.
All right.
You have my promise that I will make sure that we have another discussion like this about voting before actual voting day.
Okay, here we are. All right, we've got does everybody see the survey on the screen? Okay, what activity did you do? This was our bi-weekly meeting. And then you identify as a person with a disability or a family member of a person with a disability or other. Then click that little green arrow down at the bottom and it'll take you to the next page. You select whether you are a POG member, a member of another self-advocacy group, or not a POG member. I identify as, your choices are man, woman, non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, agender, prefer not to say, and other.
James loves to say these are standard census questions.
These are standard questions. Thank you. And that you live in either an urban area, cities with many buildings and places with many people, a rural area, counties with few buildings and places with few people, a suburban area, neighborhoods and places with many individual houses, or a mixed area, any combination of the above, or other. I wonder what other could be. Maybe if you live on a boat, perhaps? And we have asked for some racial information. I identify as white, black or African American, Asian, Native American or Alaska Native, Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, two or more races. Do not wish to answer. You do have that option. You might not even know, I don't know, or other. Then are questions about the presentation itself. I am better able to make decisions about things that affect my life, the lives of others, and or systems because of this activity. Yes, no, I don't know. These all have answers of yes, no, and I don't know. My advocacy skills have increased because of this activity. I am better able to say what I want because of this activity. And finally, I am satisfied with this activity. And then click the green arrow down at the lower right column, and that logs your answers. And having these surveys, having the data from these surveys is important for people on the go to keep on having our grant funding.
We really appreciate your time today, and we hope that this bi-weekly was very informative. We, as I said, are happy to try to answer individual questions if you want to contact us. And I know DRM shared their information as well. We can make sure that gets out to you. And we will talk about this topic more before Election Day.
All right.
Thank you.
Tracy,
Yes, Gio.
can you send this to my email, please?
Everything will go out to your email.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. All right, Matt, you were going to say?
Y'all did a good job on the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here. Please remember, you are PAG, so without you, we could not do what we do. But most importantly, go and vote.
Oh, we sure will.
Voice and go out and vote.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yep, we all childless cat ladies now, so saddle up. We ride at dawn.
When's the next call? It'll be the 23rd.
23rd.
23rd, Friday
Yeah.
the 23rd. We will see you then.
I had somebody to help me sing this.